Hello and welcome to Tech Circus's Web3 conference. I'm here with George and we're looking at Voxiberate. He's from Voxiberate and the Atlantic Council. Welcome, welcome. I see you all joining now. Please remember on the right-hand side, you have your chat feature. Do pop in your chat feature and use the chat feature. There's Q&A. Drop in some questions in the Q&A section. We will try and get around to answering some of those questions. Remember to upvote each other's questions so that we can see them and bring them out on stage as well. That's great. George, what's your talk title today that you're talking about?
So I changed my title slightly. So the title is, Can We Do Better This Time? But I need to explain why I put that title on.
Oh no, sounds good. Look forward to it. So what I'm going to do then, George, I'm going to jump backstage now. I'll still be around and hand the reins over to you. So have some fun. Good luck. Have fun.
Thanks, Nikki, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, from wherever you are dialing in. Isn't that an exciting time? I mean, for me, it's an amazingly exciting time. We are living through one more revolution for the internet and the web, and that is unique. That is unique. So, if you bear with me for a moment, I'll just put up a few slides that'll help me navigate you through my thinking, and here we go. All right. So given the fact that these are exciting times, and this is the Web 3.0, the rise of the Web 3.0, a new opportunity, can we do better this time? So let me explain why I've chosen that title by telling you a story, just beginning with a story. You may be familiar with Do Not Pay. This is the brainchild and creation of a very bright young man called Joshua Brader. A few years ago, he was collecting parking tickets for parking in the wrong places in London, and that got him pissed off. And he thought, maybe I should do something about it. So he started a company, started by essentially building a chatbot that navigated him through the grievances process, so he can get away without paying any tickets, right? And that was the birth of a very successful company called Do Not Pay. Millions of dollars invested by top VCs, and it remains a very successful company. So the question is that a story of success? Is this a product for good or not? And that's the question I'd like to explore with you today. I mean, some of you may answer, of course it is good, because you can get away without paying a parking ticket. But others might say that it was a purpose for parking tickets to exist in the first place, right? They're there because they are trying to prevent cars from parking in the wrong places, nudging people for not using their cars and using public transport, and thereby improving the air in cities. And parking tickets are also a very important income for municipalities. They need this money in order to offer services to citizens, services such as building new roads, repairing roads, public transportation. So the tension that I'm trying to highlight here is that between what is good for an individual and what is good for society at large. And it seems to me that Web 2.0 hasn't never really thought through this question carefully. And as a result, there's a lot of backlash against, the big tech, against our data being harvested without our consent, all those stories that you hear about Web 2.0 and all those things that we at Web 3.0 want to fix, okay? And those problems, I would argue, sit on the tension between what is good for the individual and what is good for society. And Web 2.0 was all about what is good for the individual. And perhaps very few individuals that sat at the top of those companies that made all the money. Let me give you one more example of what I'm trying to say here and why I think that we should do better this time. So what you see in front of you is perhaps the best depiction that I found of political polarization on the web. These are networks on Twitter, blue for Democrat, red for Republican, and it depicts how people of those two political persuasions communicated with each other, retweeted, and liked the tweets. So as you can see here, you see separation of two tribes. All right. So why did that happen? interestingly, one of the answers to that question was given by Jack Dorsey himself when he was still CEO of Twitter. I think it was in an interview at the New York Times, where he said that he wished when they were taking design decisions around Twitter that had involved people from social scientists, game theorists, to understand what would be the consequences of those design decisions. And the reason why this is important, and the reason why I want to highlight that, is that engineers and technologists, and I'm an engineer myself, right? Guilty as charged. Our way of thinking is around optimizing something. Okay, so for example, in social media, the thing that we're trying to optimize around is engagement. Okay, so what does engagement mean? We break this down. Engagement means, number of likes, number of shares. All right, so let's build an algorithm that massively optimize around those parameters. And we do that, and we do that fantastically well. And we create those multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies, but we don't really think through the consequences of that optimization. And clearly, where Web 2.0 went wrong is confusing what is efficient and what is good. And those two things are not always the same, clearly. But what is good? What does good mean? Okay, this is the big question of moral philosophy, and I only have 15 minutes for this talk, so I'm not going to go any deeper into this question, but I will suffice to say that it depends. The IEEE, here's an example. The IEEE did a research around AI ethics a few years ago, which in my opinion is the best research on AI ethics ever, and discovered that AI ethics vary according to culture. Okay, so what's good, for example, for highly individualistic Western societies who value privacy very much is not the same for African societies, for example, which are less individualistic and more communitarian. Okay, so what is good varies, and this is a very important thing to keep in mind. And it varies according to culture, it varies according to values that people have, ideas, and politics. The other key question about, the one question is what is good, and the other question, of course, which will concern us, certainly me in the next few minutes, is who decides what's good, right? Now, there are three ways to decide what's good collectively. Either you have somebody, an authoritarian, a dictator, deciding for all of us, or I don't know, a party, let's say, and they decide what's good for us, and we all have to fall in line or else. And that's authoritarian system of deciding what's good. You have an aristocratic way of deciding what's good. Sometimes this is called a noocracy, and what does that mean is the experts decide what's good for us. Okay, the people that are in the know, right? Like typical example of the pandemic, decisions about what's going to happen to us, how long we're going to be, in lockdown, vaccines and everything was taken by experts, by the epidemiologists, the doctors, etc. Right? And there's another way of deciding, and that's democracy. Okay, and by that I mean true democracy, meaning we the people, like everybody, us, the non-experts. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because, well, two reasons really. One is that Web 3.0 has a fantastic mechanism for exercising and implementing true democracy of digital platforms, and that's clearly the DAO, okay, which I'm going to spend a few minutes discussing right now. And that is really exciting. This is unique. We can change the world clearly by completely moving away from the current noocratic and authoritarian ways of deciding around, how platforms are designed, how business models are designed, into democratic ways of deciding that. Okay, so that's my point number one. Point number two is that, unfortunately for some, we can't exclude politics from Web 3.0. And no matter how much you try, how hard you try to code politics out, you will never succeed. Why? Because we're human living in human societies. And everybody has a different view, and we all have to find ways to come together. And those ways of coming together is politics, right? So this may sound a little bit contrarian, perhaps, to the dominant ideology that says that we can code everything out, we can code trust, we can code in smart contracts everything. But what I'm saying to you is that we can't. And we need to find a way to bring in politics into Web 3.0 in such a way as so that DAOs are adopted at scale, are adopted by human society, and they don't, live only in the very confined worlds of few technologists with, with interesting ideas. So what I'm suggesting is that, and this is a little bit complex, the slide, but I'm just going to break it down very, very quickly. So what I'm suggesting is that, in liberal democracy, let's say, right, we have a system of centralized governance, clearly, right? Decisions are taken in a centralized way. And we have more or less 3 layers of making this system work. We, the citizens, vote to elect our representatives, like every, 4 years or something. Then you have a middle layer where discussions and deliberations take place about, about changes in the social contract, right? Whether it's going to be something around taxes or defense or whatever you want to discuss. So those deliberations take place through our representatives. And there's a government that executes those decisions, right? Okay. Now, what we have in DAO right now, with decentralized government, I think we only have 2 layers. We have the layer of members using their tokens to propose protocol changes and to vote. And we have, of course, smart contracts executing those protocol changes and implementation. But we're missing a very important layer. We're missing a very important layer where people can deliberate changes before voting what to implement. And some DAOs are trying to go around it by, voting representatives, i.e. imitating, if you like, the representative democracy model. Some don't. What I'd like to argue to you is that if you want DAOs to be adopted at scale, if you, for example, can imagine a DAO that is used in order to take democratic decisions in a city where you have perhaps hundreds of thousands or millions of citizens that all need to have a voice, but within that city, you have, various constituencies, many of them with conflicting interests, it would be impossible to sustain a code-only DAO without a utility that enables citizens to deliberate about what needs to be decided. So, how do we bring politics back into the DAO? This is what we're trying to do at Voxiberate, which is a startup that I have the honor of mentoring and leading. So what we are thinking, and that's something that other people are thinking in different ways, but let me say what the opportunity is to solve that problem. The opportunity is to look into political science, to look into examples from political science. And we looked into a deliberation method called the citizen assembly, and take lessons and ideas from political science and try to implement them into DAOs for the reasons I've just described, so that members of the DAO can take democratic decisions and decide what is good, what is bad, decide around design, decide around purpose. Okay. So what is a citizen assembly? Citizen assemblies or citizen juries have been used around the world for many, many years. It's essentially a mechanism whereby you select a representative group from the larger group of members. So it differs, if you like, from voting for representatives, because that group has a specific task and a specific purpose. They're not professional politicians. They're not representatives of the DAO for the full 12 months or 2 years or whatever the term might be. They're there for a specific purpose, right? Let's say to decide, let's think of a cooperative, let's say, of gig workers, trying to decide whether a percentage of the income should go into an insurance fund to insure people, to buy life insurance and so forth. And there are some people that want it, some people that don't, and some decision needs to be taken, and some conversation needs to be had about the merits, so everybody can come into consensus. So that's how the mechanism works. It's a way whereby that group will have that deliberation, that group will be able to confer with experts if necessary, in order to understand better the problem, and then we'll come to a decision, and then we'll come to a recommendation, in this case for the DAO. And the DAO can then accept that recommendation or reject the recommendation, but there will be a recommendation from the people by the people. Now, our assumption and our hypothesis here of merging political science and Web 3.0 is that this example that I gave you, this idea of citizen assembly, has been tested very successfully over many years in the physical world, in the real world. It's a very expensive, very cumbersome method, but we think we can apply code, okay, in the way to reduce the barriers, make it more efficient, but at the same time enable and allow space for communities to deliberate. Okay, so with that, I'll leave you with just a few thoughts, if I can. I think if we want to do better this time in Web 3.0, we really need to think about the ethics of technology. We really need to think about what are the effects of technological progress. So when we think about projects, so far, the dogma is, what is the problem that you solve, right? And is it a problem worth solving? I think this is a very valid question. We should keep asking it, but we should add one more question. Is the solution to that problem good for humans and society as well? And we should try and answer this question. If we try and answer this question, then hopefully we'll do better this time. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, for listening, and I'll just turn it back to Nikki and the organizers, perhaps to spend a little bit more time for conversation. Nikki, over to you.
Hi there. No, George, that was very interesting. Great topic and great conversation there to explore. I was chatting away with some of the people in the chat box there, and I did run up a quick poll. Last few moments, people in the audience, if you want to go across to the poll section on the right-hand side of the screen there, do throw an answer in there. Have you heard of a DAO before? I mean, what are you in the audience? I'd love to hear it. Do you know the meaning of it? Is it the first time you're hearing about this? I mean, speak to us. Let's know what's going on. I'll close that in a moment. I'll pull the results on stage in a moment. During that, though, also, what was one of the other questions back here? There was a question, and I guess this is a question to the audience as well. I mean, everyone can throw this in the audience and answer this. And George, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And Moen has asked regarding the problems maybe with DAOs. Is it an issue that we have to be conscious of? With those that obviously have the most tokens in it, steer the ship. I mean, is this a problem, and what should we maybe be looking out for during this? Good question. So always, yeah.
I think it's a brilliant question, and I would agree with the friend who posed that question. I worry about that as well. Clearly, DAOs are plutocracies, meaning the government are the ones that are richer, they have more tokens, and that is a huge challenge, right? We think, and that's something that we're going to be testing, that even in DAOs where there are majorities that have the tokens, it's in their interests that there is wide consensus in the group. So it's not to their interest to outvote minorities, let's put it this way, okay? And the problem that I've described, the problem of meaningful consensus within a DAO, and think of DAOs, not just DAOs that are used currently, to run very sort of technocratic systems, but think of DAOs in the next few years. They're going to be used by professional associations, by cooperatives, by cities, by people who have no idea about Web 3.0, and they need not have an idea about the plumbing. It will be all about taking decisions and making sure that their voice is heard. Okay, so I'm talking about that near future, hopefully, right? So in that near future, we absolutely need true democracy to shine, even if we have this handicap with DAOs ultimately being plutocracies in terms of token distribution.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting area and what people are going to use this for going forward, and how the people will decide and use this technologies going forward. And I think that's a great thing to keep an eye on. We have another question here. Let's have a look. This was upvoted the most in the audience there. what problems do you think startups, small companies will be able to solve within the Web3 implementation? I mean, I guess this is rather a broad question, and technologies all over the place. This is open to the floor really as well.
Okay, so if I had a VC fund, right? You know the song "If I Were a Rich Man." So play that song in the background while I'm speaking. All right. So I would fund companies that are trying to completely reinvent digital platforms currently, especially gig worker platforms. I mean, take for example Uber. Can we create an Uber that belongs to everybody? You know, the riders and the customers. Can we create a social media that don't optimize around engagement, and you have that amazing graph of the blues and the reds, but optimize around consensus. So the algorithm is trying to bring you head to head with someone you disagree, right? Because that's what makes for conversation, right? We need to learn how to enjoy disagreement in this world, right? So think like that. You know, think of turning the tables, right? And I think that's the big opportunity here. That's the big opportunity in front of us.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got people in the conference here today that are doing a lot of the reach out, getting the speakers for these conferences now. The technologies that people are using at the moment and what they're adapting. And we've got UNICEF, and you know they've got a new crypto fund themselves. We've got people later in the conference speaking about how they're using some of these web technologies, Web3 technologies within new, funds over there on that side of it, which is fascinating. I didn't know anything about that until I started getting involved with all of this as well.
And you know what, Nicky, I think the timing is right as well. I mean, there is clearly an awareness across the world that, you know, all those platforms are just working for a small minority of people that make all the money, exploiting everybody else, okay? An alternative that is viable, you know, you'll be a winner. You will be creating huge economic value, which instead of being extracted, it will be contained within the platform, right? And we will be reinventing capitalism. We will make capitalism work for everybody instead of just a few. Okay, so I think that's the great challenge here.
Oh no, there was a big argument around this centralized versus decentralized, and I know I've got my own little backstory, a little war on at the moment with regards to I don't know if I should be regards to Discord. Something we all see a lot of it as a anonymous sort of using it. As platform to use for the social media, and for some reason they've just totally blocked my account there, for example, 2 years worth of work, and now you can't access that information. No support, no nothing there or something. So it's fascinating what can then be resolved within these platforms where you can own that data and start taking that ownership back again, away from the different things.
So, Nicky, what happened to you is it's what happened to many other people. You know, currently we are just, you know, we are back in feudal times, okay, where you plow the land that doesn't belong to you, and you get a bit of, you know, a little bit of bread to survive, you know, and that's it. And then, you know, the feudal lord, whose name might be Mark or whoever, comes along, you know, prima noche or whatever, and takes everything away. Okay, and you're left with nothing. We're always in debt to the platforms. Right? Metaphorically and sometimes literally. So these are the juicy problems that we can solve this time around, and that's why I hope we don't miss that opportunity, right? Because Web 3.0 can very well be used to replicate Web 2.0, right? In exactly the same way. Okay, you just pretend to be more distributive. I think there should be a purpose, not in everything, all right, but in some projects definitely should be a purpose to make it different this time.
Oh no, and there's people that would argue this is what, when they came up with the internet in the first place, this was the model they were trying to implement and show. And things happen, things change, and things happen. So, but anyway, that's another discussion, I think there. But okay, let's go over to the poll and see what people have done over in the poll. The simple question. Let me close this. I'm not 100% sure if you're going to see this results or not, but let's have a look here. Can you see the results there, George, on your screen, or is it? Yep. Oh, perfect. Okay. So, do you know the meaning of a DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization? And it's pretty interesting, really. There is still a nice mix of people. Of course, a lot of you do. 53% of you say yes, you know of it. 24% say no, and 22% heard of them but not sure what it is. So, I think there is still a lot of opportunity there for education within this.
So, Nicky, let me attempt to give you a 30 seconds definition of DAO, right? Which is probably mistaken, but yeah, let's kick off the conversation, right? So, the question is, if you have a completely decentralized company, right, an organization that doesn't have management team, doesn't have the CEO, doesn't have anyone actually running it, I mean, how do you take decisions? Okay, that's the problem that the DAO is trying to solve, and it has solved it, right? You take decisions in a verified, cryptographically verified way using blockchain in something called the DAO, which is essentially a network of people that each one has some kind of vote, and that vote is represented by the so-called tokens. So don't worry about tokens yet, but you have a vote, and you can vote and collectively decide what to do. Should the DAO decide, for example, to spend its money in upgrading the system doing X, or upgrading the system doing Y, etc., etc. So this is a mechanism for taking collective decisions in the absence of a centralized authority. That's in a nutshell what the DAO is.
No, I mean, I think it's great. Now, George, is there anything else in there? If you see any other questions that you might want to answer or anything, or are we looking good down there? There's so many there. I'm not sure we've got time to go through everything. I'm just conscious of our.
I'll be available to anyone to please reach out with your questions, whatever. You know, I'm an easy guy to find on the web. Definitely, I'm not hiding. Maybe I should.
Are you? No. Are you staying around? Are you logged in for both days here today?
Yeah,
okay. Perfect. So everyone in the audience, if you look also at the top of your screens, you should see a little tab that says people. Do be aware that you can set up any messaging there. You can set up meetings. You can go meet other attendees, other speakers. You can, this is really an interactive platform. We've got speaker booths that you can go over and have a look at. A lot of different social things running over there. We have networking roundtables during the break. So there's so much going on. Don't just feel like you're staring at a screen all the time. This is really interactive platform. We do it all through Air Meets. It gives you so much more that you can do in the audience rather than just sitting there and staring at the video always. So do please get involved around the event. There's so much going on, and it's going to be a great 2 days. So thank you very much, and yeah, see you in the next session, people.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks everybody as well. Thank you.